Hello guys, welcome. Last week, episode 2 of Dragon Age Vows and Vengeance released. This episode features one of our first companions in Veilguard, Scout Lace Harding. This episode also introduces us to Drayden Kiel, a mysterious cult, and a group of desperate villagers. So grab yourself a nice warm cup of tea and let's talk about Dragon Age Vows and Vengeance episode 2, The Cult of the Doomblade. Episode 2 starts with Inquisition Scout Lace Harding being in a bit of a situation. She's battling what seems to be a rage demon in an ancient cemetery. It seems to actually be going pretty well for Harding, that is until the demon decides to turn all the dead into undead. Luckily, Nadia just so happens to pass by and decides to jump in. Together, the two of them manage to defeat the demon and the undead. After the battle, the two introduce themselves, and it turns out that Scout Harding is actually hunting the Dreadwolf as well. The Dreadwolf isn't prey, though. He's a friend. Or, he was, at least. Now he's misguided. Of course, Nadia wants him alive as well, as she needs him to break into the Fade. Before Nadia can give any of the details though, she is interrupted by a strange ringing in her head and the sound of Elio's voice calling out to her from the Fade, and she passes out. When she wakes up, Harding tells her they are back at Harding's camp. The two talk for a few moments and Nadia tells Harding about what happened to Elio. Just as Nadia is about to tell Harding about the ancient relic Solas wanted, the two are once again interrupted, this time by a scream in the distance. They decide to take a closer look. Following the sounds of the screams to the source, they arrive at a cave where they witness the start of a strange ritual. A group of people chanting in a strange language and two prisoners tied to a pole. A woman, referred to as Mayor Devlin, has just delivered the two prisoners to a man named Bulmer, who plans to sacrifice them to the Deathless One. The mayor leaves the ritual site as the ritual continues. Nadia and Harding both want to help, but while Scout Harding plans a more careful approach, Nadia rushes straight in. Nadia and Harding manage to take down most of the present cultists and force the remaining ones to retreat, but not before Elisa, one of the prisoners, gets stabbed and dies. After the other cultists have fled, Nadia frees the other prisoner, but they aren't exactly happy with Nadia's interference. The prisoner, named Drayden, explains that they had actually volunteered for this, as they have been studying the cult for almost a year now. And this is the closest they've ever been to finding out more about their sacrificial ritual. And if nothing else, it saved another from the harvest. Each month, 2 villagers are selected for the offering, but no one has seen what really happens. Drayden hoped that by learning more about the ritual, they'd somehow be able to stop it for good. Nadia says she'd like to have a talk with the mayor, and so the three head to the village of Ravensbrook. Once there, Nadia demands to speak with the mayor as she wants to know why she's leaving her people to die. The mayor and the other villagers are not happy to find out that the ritual has been interrupted. Bulmer will be back, and not just for simple revenge. He will take their children. "Then you fight," Nadia tells them. But these people aren't warriors. They're just farmers, merchants, and cheesemakers. They don't even have a weapons blacksmith. The last time they tried to resist Bulmer, it did not go well. If Nadia is so eager to fight, Drayden suggests, perhaps she can fight for the villagers. Harding and Nadia took down a lot of cultists by themselves earlier. With their help, these villagers might actually stand a chance. They can help them make weapons and teach them how to fight. It takes a bit to convince Nadia, who really just wants to continue on her quest to free Elio, but Harding promises her that if she helps these villagers, she will help her find the Dreadwolf. For the next few days, Harding and Nadia train the villagers and help them prepare for Bulmer's inevitable return. Harding trains the hunters for bow and arrow, and Drayden and Nadia train the remaining villagers for ground combat. Nadia and Drayden do not get along. When Drayden questions Nadia's methods, she says that, sure, they might have read books about war, but that's very different from the real deal, so they should just run along and let her handle this. Drayden later tells Nadia that she's too harsh on the villagers, and that she should probably just let them take a break. Nadia, of course, disregards that, so Drayden proposes a challenge. Strike me before I strike you. If Nadia wins, she gets all the gold in Drayden's bag. If Drayden wins, the villagers get to take a break. Nadia, being angry and overconfident as always, accepts the challenge, but to her surprise, Drayden is more capable than she first thought and ends up winning the challenge. Later that night in the tavern, the villagers are celebrating the progress they've made. Nadia doesn't understand why the villagers are so happy when Bulmer could attack them at any moment. They need to focus. But Harding explains that it's good for them to remember what they're fighting for before they head into battle. Harding then asks Nadia if she is okay. Even though they only just met, she seems different since the battle. Nadia then sighs and explains to them that she comes from a very poor family. One day, a man accused her mother of stealing, and even though she was innocent, Nadia could only watch as the soldiers dragged her mother away and punished her for a crime she did not commit. The punishment, of course, was death. Nadia begged for help from her father, from anyone, but no one did anything. That's why she's been on edge, and that's why she's been so angry that these villagers would just give up and willingly serve their people to a monster. Drayden says they're sorry. They had no idea, but Nadia says she doesn't need their pity. All she needs to do is drive a dagger through Bulmer's heart so that she can get back to rescuing her love from the Fade. Wait, what was that about the Fade? But before Drayden can get an answer, they are interrupted by a scout who reports Bulmer is coming. And he is not alone. He's got an entire army with him. Harding and Nadia get the villagers ready for the attack while Drayden runs off, saying they have a little surprise planned and they'll meet them on the battlefield. Fighting Bulmer's army proves to be a challenge, but with the trained villagers and with the help of Drayden's a little surprise, shock bombs, a little trick they learned from books, the group is able to defeat the cult. Bulmer almost defeats Nadia, but luckily Drayden comes in just in time to help her. Together, they manage to defeat this crazy cult leader for good. The next day, Nadia is ready to move on. The village is saved, and she needs to continue on her quest to save Elio. As promised, Harding provides her with some information on Solus's whereabouts. Nadia asks her to come along, but Harding says that as soon as she is finished here, she has to return to her partner Varric. They've got something going on, and he needs her help. As Nadia is getting ready to leave, Drayden approaches her and says that the other day she mentioned something about the Fade, and they wanted to talk. But Nadia interrupts them and says that she doesn't need any of their theories or history lessons right now. This is personal and important. You don't understand. I was researching the cult because I study the Fade. Drayden explains that they've dedicated their entire life to understanding it, so if Nadia's problem lies beyond the veil, they can actually help her. And so, Drayden joins Nadia on her quest to save Elio as they head to their next destination, the Enderfells. So that was episode 2. This one definitely felt quite a bit faster paced than the first one. Apparently, everything that happened, Nadia meeting Harding, interrupting the ritual, meeting the villagers, the training, the battle, it all happened in a span of 5 days. But the episode made it sound like it all happened in like a day and a night, or 2 days max. I think we could have used maybe a few extra quiet moments between all the action. A bit more conversation between the training. I know it's hard to convey the passage of time since they've only got sound to work with. Like, when you have visuals, you can show things like the characters being in different areas, the sun going down and rising again. On my second listen, it does become more obvious that more time passes, but on my first listen, it definitely felt like a day or 2 at most. I would also have liked to see just a little bit more interaction between Nadia and Harding before they interrupted the cult's ritual. Especially since Harding says Nadia seems different after the battle. Yeah, she does say, I know we just met, but you could argue that Nadia was already angry and reckless when she jumped in to help Harding with the demon. Giving them a little extra time to have a quiet, casual conversation together, a moment for Nadia to let down her guard just a little bit, would have emphasized Harding's point about Nadia being different. I don't think it's ever directly stated what exactly Harding was doing at the cemetery, but it's very likely that she was there because she is also tracking Solus. In the previous episode, Olin said to Nadia that he heard Solus had plans to visit ancient burial grounds in the hinterlands. If this is one of those burial grounds, it makes sense for both Nadia and Harding to be there. Speaking of which, I like that the demon senses the veil is being messed with, and that it's likely not going to last. The demon actually tells them their world is coming to an end, but of course, it's just a stupid demon saying things to mess with you, so why would you take this seriously? So the demon gets one last smack in the face, and that's the end of that. So Harding introduces herself as Inquisition Scout Lace Harding, while she could have just easily introduced herself as just Lace Harding. That means either the Inquisition hasn't disbanded in the world state that they decided to go with in the podcast, or Harding just uses that title no matter what. Even if the Inquisition is officially disbanded, a core group is still actively working to find Solus and stop his plans. So I suppose they still call themselves the Inquisition. I don't know, I just think it's interesting she used Inquisition specifically. I think Nadia's reaction is also interesting. She didn't seem at all surprised when Harding introduced herself as an Inquisition scout. She was only surprised to find her all the way out here. So apparently it's still common knowledge that the Inquisition is active in some capacity, and that they're no longer operating from Ferelden or Orlais, since again, Nadia comments on Harding being all the way out here. I guess people just don't know what the Inquisition is doing, or maybe they forgot or just don't care. It has been almost 10 years, and you know what? The people of Thedas have been through a lot lately, I don't blame them. Also, I guess regardless of what the Inquisitor intends to do with Solus, Harding still sees him as a friend. That's kinda sweet. I think it's cute that Harding uses very Dragon Age lore specific curses and phrases in this episode, like thank the stones and nug humping, which, hey, I don't think Harding's stance on the stone is ever mentioned in Inquisition, but for a dwarf that grew up on the surface, she sure uses the stone a lot. I know using the stone doesn't necessarily mean that she believes in it or anything, like people will use oh my god even though they're not religious, but you'd think for someone that grew up in a village near Redcliffe, she'd use Andraste and Maker rather than the stone. Or I don't know, maybe her parents used it and she picked it up from them. The main antagonist of this episode and the leader of the cult of the Doomblade is a man named Bulmor, and while I don't have a whole lot to say about him, there is one thing that caught my attention. As he is about to beat Nadia, or thinks he is about to beat Nadia, in the second battle, he says,
I will enjoy seeing the look in your eyes when the sky opens up and the last thing you see is the Black City shimmering on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't think he simply means dying when he says that. So that means, like the demon from before, he somehow knows what's happening to the Veil. So the cult is sacrificing people to the Deathless One. And while at this point we still have no idea who or what that is, it seems to be connected to the Fade, or at least that's the idea I'm getting. At the end of the episode, Drayden says they were studying the cult because they dedicate their whole life to studying the Fade. So that means there must be a connection between the cult, or whatever the cult is doing, and the Fade, right? Not that I think they're connected to Solus necessarily, but maybe they're somehow aware of the fact that there's something weird going on with the Veil, and form their cult based on that. Speaking of the cult, there's more ritual chanting. Only this time, it's not Elven. The language is not something we've heard in Dragon Age before, as far as I know. The words sound a bit like Swedish or Norwegian to me. It's definitely not a one-to-one, but running it through a few translators, it seems that these words are inspired by or based upon Swedish, Icelandic, and Old Norse. Unfortunately, I don't speak any of these languages, so if any of you watching happen to be fluent in Swedish or Icelandic, or if you know anything about Old Norse, I would love your input on this. When throwing the entire chat into the translator, it doesn't really come up with anything coherent. The closest I can get is, now for sectors, grown up, web, and that's when translating from Icelandic. If we go word for word, nu translates to now in both Swedish and Icelandic, fyr translates to lighthouse or beacon from Swedish and to for from Icelandic, up translates to up, and komin translates to arrived in Icelandic. After some searching, I was even able to find a translation for some of the Old Norse words. So Gyrim is the dative plural of geir, and gear translates to spear. Bafir means weaving or web or the thrusting of spears, and although not an exact one-to-one, grar means grey. I couldn't find anything on Verjuar, so that's probably just a made-up word also. I don't know if any of my pronunciations were correct there, but yeah, we're just going with it. Since the language used here is made up, it can't really be translated directly, but if I were to take a guess at what this means, it's probably something along the lines of, "It's time to raise your spears. The beacon has arrived." Yeah, I don't know. As for what language this could be in the lore, my best guess would be Avar. But yeah, just a wild guess. This episode also introduces us to Drayden Kiel, our kind of mysterious storyteller and writer with a strange connection to the Fade. We still don't know what kind of connection this is. We only know they dedicate their life to studying the Fade. I'm sure we'll find out more about them in later episodes, though. I also really like the dynamic between Drayden and Nadia, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them interact more. I don't really have a whole lot more to say, I think. Overall, I enjoyed this episode. The pacing was a bit weird, but I'm curious to get to know our main cast of characters better, and hopefully learn more about the Deathless One, whatever they may be. The next episode will take us to the Anderfells, and if the teaser is anything to go by, it's going to be another eventful episode. Mountains, strange quakes, anomalies, and of course, Tavern. I'm already looking forward to it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, let me know by liking this video, or leave a comment and let me know what you think of the latest episode of Dragon Age Vows and Vengeance. What do you think Drayden's connection to the Fade is, and who or what do you think the Deathless One is? If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing or join my Patreon. If you want to have a chat sometime, feel free to join my Discord server, the link is in the description. That's it for now though, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.